There's apparently been a major change to AEW's planned roster split. We've got an update on AEW's plans for Rampage, and WWE reportedly rejected Wembley for a big PLE. Stay tuned for all the juicy deets. So over the last few weeks, news out of AEW is that there's potentially looking to be a firm roster split, and then maybe a not so firm roster split, and then a hard roster split, and then it's all kind of up in the air, but it very much feels like the roster is going to be split heading into the debut of AEW Collision, whenever that may be.
Yep.
And it's all kind of centered around the fallout from the brawl out at All Out. But next month, it's going to debut, apparently, and it's going to separate everybody who's involved. But in an update on the roster split, Dave Meltzer has said in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that current plans call for AEW to have less of a hard roster split, as previously told to people who do know about it, and plans have yet to be finalized and everything's being determined in real time. But the current idea will see CM Punk be the star of Collision most of the time, and he'll make appearances on Dynamite when needed. If Punk is at Dynamite, talent he has issues with will be booked on Collision that week.
Yeah, so they're going, right, we can't have these people in the building at the same time. We're going to split the rosters, but we're going to have a little bit of... It's basically like when WWE had that rule of 3 people allowed on any week.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way to go for a roster split, right? Because you could establish a whole show around a certain group of talent, but then just throw it out the window one week and it's like, well, we needed him on the other show. It just doesn't... I'd rather a hard split. Yeah,
I think a hard split makes more sense and it would feel more natural than having people kind of jump back and forward. But then, you are then going to have 2 teams working on 2 sets of stories that are going to have to interlock for pay-per-views every week, and it can become quite tiring. So my biggest question with it is, like, what happens if, it gets worse? What if the kind of the morale starts to get a bit more tetchy again? There's a lot of potential things up in the air here, but I'm kind of keen to see what a softer split would look like, but I think I'd prefer a harder split. I think I agree with you.
I think for me, whenever I hear like drafts or brand splits, I think thinking back to how it was when I was a kid, where it felt like, oh, I'm a fan of SmackDown, and I'm a fan of Raw.
The only way you'd see them lock up was pay-per-view, right?
That was Big Four.
That was it, yeah.
And it was great, and it felt special. And I feel like if AEW Collision debuts and it just feels like, oh, it's Dynamite, but with people
an asterisk.
With the people that weren't on the show on Wednesday, it's not going to feel as special. It might go in a little bit of Rampage territory and feel like a B show.
If storylines start to bleed through both shows as well, and
it just doesn't work as naturally for me. But I will give them the benefit of the doubt. If Collision knocks out of the park the first week and they've got like storylines that are just Collision and there's storylines that are just Dynamite, and then there's maybe a couple in the main event scene that blend, like, it makes sense if they're not going to have more titles added and MJF can roam the brands.
One big positive of it, though, is that it's going to be more screen time for more people.
Yes.
And obviously, moving on to our next story here regarding the plans for Rampage, with Dark and Dark Elevation seeming to kind of be coming to that slow fade off.
Yeah.
It's a bit up in the air because now you're going to have Collision and Dynamite, which look like they're going to be the A shows. So what happens to Rampage? Well, the Observer have reported that Rampage is going to be booked in a similar manner to Dark and Dark Elevation after Collision debuts, and the show is going to be utilized to showcase younger talent. Rampage will also likely feature talents primarily from Dynamite, as the show is often going to be taped, apparently, following a live episode of Dynamite on Wednesday nights. Both AEW Dark and Dark Elevation were cancelled this past week by AEW as it looks to shake up its TV output. So I think that, as long as it's not just sort of a forgotten about show, that's the key. I'm all for a show that's going to showcase younger talent, and especially if you are going to get some of that bleed from Dynamite, maybe you can utilize some of the mid and lower card from Dynamite to be sort of the mid and upper card of Rampage. But it feels like it's very much just going to take the slot and the name's going to change. But I'm sort of hoping we're going to see a bit more.
It needs
a bit more going on there than that.
It either needs to have more importance or have like its own storylines that also just bleed in. It just feels very separate, and it feels very, at the moment, disjointed. It's like, it's Rampage.
I just feel they can't let it feel like, like a Superstars, that it needs to have an identity.
That was
as
main
a brand.
evented by Undertaker on the very first show. I'll have you know, that is a great show.
It needs to have its own identity as a brand, I think, as you were kind of touching on there. So it's so long as they can keep it feeling important, I'll be really happy, because that'll feel like a big deal, right? 3 shows, each kind of doing their own thing, each with their own identity, their own rosters.
It'll just be interesting though with having a brand split and having the Collision taping on a Saturday and Dynamite on a Wednesday,
and then Ring of Honor just sort of in and around all of this.
Ring of Honor supposedly taping on the Saturday with Collision. Where does the talent, if they've got to come in for a Wednesday night, like let's say they want CM Punk on a Rampage one week, but they want the Elite on Dynamite, how does that work? You know, there's so many questions still to be answered about this, but I'm excited to see going forward them shake up their TV output, have a little bit of a fresh feel going on, because it feels a little bit, it has felt a bit stagnant for Rampage.
Yeah. Well, moving back to the other side of the fence ahead of their big night tonight for Backlash. At the end of last night's SmackDown, Rhea Ripley teamed with Dominic Mysterio to take on Zelina Vega and Rey Mysterio. The match ended with Finn Balor and Damian Priest attacking Rey, but then the LWO came out to rescue alongside Bad Bunny, and then Priest managed to escape. Dominic fell victim to Bunny's attacks, and then Bad Bunny held up an LWO shirt and joined the faction going into tonight's big match against Damian Priest. He pulled the shirt on.
Oh, yeah.
Got rid of his WWF Attitude Era branded jacket that's all pixelated. Go check that out. I bet when he ran through that curtain, it was like, no! And the panda was just sitting there getting the baseball bat out of the cage.
It looked like a very expensive jacket as well, and he threw it into the crowd. And whoever's got that, you've probably made a fortune, because it's Bad Bunny's jacket, and he's the biggest musical artist in the world right now.
They're probably still just holding it like this, looking at it.
I still can't get over the fact that Bad Bunny he's the most streamed artist currently.
Yeah.
And he's on a main event of a pay-per-view.
It's like Cyndi Lauper
Premium
level
live
stuff.
event.
It is like Cyndi Lauper level stuff.
Yeah, it's baffling, but it's crazy to see him join the LWO. I'm excited. I would like to see him stick around more regularly on TV, obviously, with his musical obligations.
It's going to be kind of few and far between that he is able to have, even a few week run, I imagine. He's going to be one of the busiest
he was at
the
Met Gala on Monday while Damian Priest was shouting at him on Raw. But LWO joining there, he makes perfect sense in that faction. He fits it perfectly. I'm excited to see what they do. Maybe give him a tag team title run.
Me too. It'll be I could maybe get behind that a little bit.
WWE champion.
If you make it a free bird rule where you can kind of come back and I'll be all for that.
Give him the new World Heavyweight title.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it. In the main, headlining Coachella with the WWE World Heavyweight Champion.
I can just hear the keys starting to fire up. So looking more toward the WWE office side of things, recently, of course, Endeavor, the owners of UFC, bought out WWE, and they're planning on merging them together into one big super conglomerate, and everybody's kind of been up in the air about it. There's a lot of confusion as to how far that control may reach now that they own the company. But it's previously been noted that Endeavor will oversee WWE in a similar way to UFC, and WWE will be given freedom in how they operate, with Endeavor on hand to assist with boosting revenue. One area that Endeavor apparently won't interfere with is WWE creative, Nick Khan revealed during WWE's Q1 2023 earnings call. He said, "I can certainly represent emphatically to you on the creative side that there's no one at Endeavor or the UFC that has any interest in trying to interfere with that in any way whatsoever. I think Dana White would also represent to you that never, or almost never, I don't know the specifics, but never would be my guess, have the Endeavor folks told him, you should do this match or you should do it this way. That's not what they do. That's not what they say they do, and that's not what they're gonna do." So I feel that that's kind of, the clearest route, right? Like, why would Endeavor buy it to then get right into the nitty gritty if they are kind of forming just a big conglomerate? And I feel it may be more about just having it. It's an asset. Yeah. It's an asset that's under their control.
It's going to make them money. It's like you don't buy something to instantly change it. And as much as some people might disagree about WWE working and creative working,
they're making a lot of money.
Making a lot of money, and if it works, don't if it's not broken, don't fix it, sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's working. People are enjoying WWE at the moment. They're happy with it. Obviously, Vince McMahon is back at the head and the helm of creative. But I'm not surprised Endeavor's going, no, we're just going to sit back and you make us money. I
think it would take something very, very, very drastic, for Endeavor to have to jump in and go, hey, no, this needs to change. And I think even then it wouldn't be this, we're taking over now. It would be very much an edict, and it would be like, this needs fixing, this needs addressing. But it makes sense, right? It's an
Absolutely.
But finishing off today, considering that AEW are pre-selling and now officially selling Wembley the hell out.
60,000 tickets have been sold as of the time of this recording.
I see a lot of conspiracies. I see a lot of American takes that are like, it can't be. They've bought half the tickets themselves. They're only selling every other row. We are that starved of big wrestling shows. I'm telling you.
I don't believe it. I think Tony Tony Khan has bought every single ticket in that building and then decided to sell them on Ticketmaster.
Oh, that monster.
What's he done? You know, that's what it means by AEW's bottle ticket.
This is genuinely like how starved we are for big wrestling shows. Wembley feels like a monumental thing. I think everybody and their nan is trying to get tickets to go to it.
Yeah.
You know, Clash was amazing. We're going to get on to Clash in just a second. But Wembley just feels like it's where the pin was last put in, right?
Yeah.
And so to kind of come back and take the pin out and put a new pin in there, it's
monumental.
Big deal.
Monumental.
But WWE, of course, returned to our shores for Clash at the Castle at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, Wales, with over 60,000 fans in attendance back in September of last year. Cardiff apparently wasn't WWE's first choice for the pay-per-view, though, and Dave Meltzer reported on the Wrestling Observer Radio that the company originally planned to hold Clash at Wembley Stadium in London. WWE scrapped these plans, however, as they were offered more money to hold the event at Principality Stadium. It's previously been revealed that WWE were given funding by the Welsh Government as part of their major event strategy to hold the event in Cardiff. The Welsh Government have not revealed how much they paid WWE in order to protect commercial interests, but you got to think it's a fair amount.
It's got to be a fair amount to move away from Wembley and have the historical aspect of being like, we're running Wembley Stadium. And AEW's beaten them to the punch. And WWE, if they announce Wembley as a future location for one of their shows, it just feels like, not that they're copying AEW, of course, but just like
they're always following, and people are always going to compare the numbers. Did they do more tickets? How were the cards? When you stack them next to each other, which was the better night? Which gave you more value? There's always going to be comparison points between events ran in the same venue. But at the same time, I think WWE will return to Wembley, but I think we're going to maybe see a bit of a shift in strategy from like the mega big stadiums, because Wembley's biggest stadium in the UK.
In the UK,
like by far, there's no bigger stadium. But I think that, you know, if you have travel boards and governments able to offer you money like production grants and all of this other stuff in order to sort of coax you to come and host an event somewhere, which is going to drive money into the local revenue, you've got to think that they're going to offset the cost of those 30-odd thousand seats you didn't sell, you know, in a bigger arena, plus more. And then at the same time, you're endearing yourself more to a different area rather than just doing London. If you're, they go Paris, if they went Berlin, I think they'd still do quite well.
They'd still probably do quite well. That's the thing. Europe is quite easy to get to for all over Europe. There's trains
hop on
and
the
there's
Eurostar,
planes,
an hour in a plane.
Easy stuff. But it's interesting WWE didn't try and run Money in the Bank in Wembley because I feel like they could have.
I'm sure it's because Motley Crue and Def Leppard are running Wembley that night. So they could have ran maybe another stadium, but then when you look at things like nobody knows other than the company, obviously, but they may have partnerships with set venues or set operators of venues where it's like, we can't really run this, or it might have been that other venues weren't able to host an event of that size at such short notice. Or also,
O2 Arena, where Money in the Bank is going to be, is 20,000 seater.
It feels also running more exclusive for the higher price as well.
And they're also running SmackDown the night before, so they can say their attendance for Money in the Bank weekend was 40,000. Which they'll probably do for Puerto Rico for Backlash this weekend, because SmackDown was also in the same venue. But I think that's it.
Yeah, I reckon we'll see them back.
Hope so.
But anyway, stick with us. We've, of course, got Backlash coverage tonight, everything that goes with it. Adam and Andrew will be live on stream right here on this very YouTube channel. If you just come back a bit later on. In fact, just hop over now. You'll be able to go and sit and wait.
Oh, yeah. Hit the bell.
Nothing else to do today. Nothing big happening in London at all. But yeah, we'll have all the standard coverage, what happened at. All the regular content that would usually be going out is going out as well. So just keep it with us. And any more breaking news throughout the day, we will be back. So catch us in a bit. Stay safe. See you next time.